Hello everybody and welcome back to IEEE's AutoCAD Series. I'll be your host once again, Lucas Saber, and in this video we're going to go and make a drawing together. In previous videos I've shown you how to use all the tools, but not how to make a drawing with them, not the kind of like mindset you can approach it with and all that kind of stuff. Well, anyhow, what we're going to make today is this right here. It's called the adjustable fork, and not like that really matters for the name, but we're going to copy this exactly in AutoCAD. It's a really important skill to know how to make something with specific dimensions, or how to make your own thing, and how, like, what kind of processes and what kind of thoughts you should have while you're doing that. And we're going to have a link in the description of the video for that file so you can have it and practice this and make it on your own and kind of explore how you can use the different tools in whichever way is comfortable for you. So the first thing I want to say is it's important in AutoCAD to try to make things efficiently and not try to waste time. I mean, there's so many tools that can do so many things. It would be so wasteful if we just didn't use them and didn't like optimize our work time. I mean, we have them made to do that, so let's use them for that. Let's not waste any time. One of the observations I'm making about this drawing is that it's symmetrical. So what we're going to do is we're going to make half of it and then mirror it over. So to do that, we're going to make this top part. But before we actually start drawing anything and get into the fun stuff, what we're going to do is we're going to go and change our units. Now, my units are already in inches, but we're going to make them in inches just for this time. And don't forget to save and all that. I would like to stress how important it is to change your units, because if you get through an entire drawing and it's in the wrong units, your entire drawing can get messed up. The whole thing, and it can be super annoying. So I would highly suggest making it a habit to change your units before you start working. Okie dokie, so now that we've got that, we're going to go ahead and make some layers, because that's the second most important thing that you need to do when you're doing a drawing. Layers separate the drawing so you can hide certain parts and look at other parts more closely. So what parts are we going to be looking at? So what do we have here? We have our drawing, we have our annotations and center lines. So let's go and make layers for each of those. Drawing, center lines, and annotations. So we have here our center lines, and they are the only line type there that have a different actual line type. All the other ones are continuous, they're all white, everything's the same except for this one line type. So we're going to load in the center line type. Make sure we select that and press OK. So now we are all set up and ready to go, and before we start, let's go ahead and get our drawing layer opened. We don't want to draw all of our drawing stuff in the annotations layer or in the zero layer. That defeats the purpose of us making our layers. So before we go ahead, last thing to say is that these are the settings I'm using in case you're interested. 45, 90, 135, 180. And when I was doing this, I practiced this before we started it up so I could make sure I knew what all of what would be good to share with you all. I recommend turning off your nearest snap. It's kind of annoying in this case, so I just would skip it altogether. We have the top portion of this, right? And you can see there's an arc, and then there's another arc right around it. That's the exact same shape, it's just bigger. And you can see the same kind of thing over here too. There's this arc, and then a bigger arc around it, and then this connecting part. So let's do 1, 2, and then 3. So like I said, it's an arc, and you can see it's an arc. You wouldn't want to draw a circle and then delete half of it. I mean, it makes more sense to use the arc tool, doesn't it? So let's do the center. Let's see, that's a good spot. So we'll start, and what's the first one? It is 0.5 inches at 0 degrees. Remember, this is 0 degrees in polar, so remember it's in polar coordinates. And we'll go 180 degrees around. And then we'll make 2 lines down to that center line where we're going to reflect upon later. And we will add this here, copy, right click, copy selection. And then we want to offset this, don't we? I mean, it's the same shape on the outside, so let's offset it. So let's copy this and join it first, because you can't offset each individual one, and even if you could, it would take more steps, more keystrokes. So let's just join it and then offset it. Well, offset requires a distance first, doesn't it? So what's the distance we want to offset it by? Well, if you take a look, the difference of radii, the difference between 1 and 0.5 is 0.5. So we just give it a 0.5 and we can offset it by that much. You'll see this is 0.5 plus 0.5 is 1 for that outside arc. Okay, so we've done this part, so let's go and do the other part here. Now, an important thing I may have mentioned before is center lines, construction lines can be kind of helpful, but you don't really need to make them specifically construction lines. A lot of times it's helpful to just draw lines and then get rid of them before you're done. For instance, I am going to go here and make a line that is 8 inches long at 0 degrees, because you can see there's this dimension here that says that's 8 inches, so I'm going to use that as reference. I'm also going to go up and make one that is 3 inches long in this direction. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another arc, because we're only doing the top here. I'm only going to do the top, but it's going to be based here, right? On this line, 3 inches in, which is what we just made this from, we're going to make this arc that is 0.75 for the radius, starting at 90 degrees, not 901, yikes, 90 degrees, and then it's going to go from this zero, it references from 0, but you're making a 90-degree chunk, right? So we'll put a 90. And then we actually need a line that extends from here to here, but we actually already made one, so why don't we just use it? So let's just move it up here. How cool. So just like we did over here, we should probably offset these, right? So let's take these, join them, and offset them. By how much? Well, the difference in radii, you can see they're labeled down here. It's 1.25 minus 0.75, whose difference is 0.5. So we press enter, and now it knows to offset by that specific amount. We'll go ahead and make a line, and we'll go ahead and connect that. So now we almost have half of it, except we need to do the half of this connector, and then we can flip it. So what we need to do is, you can see that this distance here, it's 0.75 across the whole thing, but we only want to go half of that. And if you do that, 0.75 divided by 2, you'll get 0.375. So we'll go ahead and take this and do 0.375, and we'll offset it up this way and get rid of the original. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and fillet it so we can get that fillet and that fillet. We have to go to fillet and then right click and tell it we want to give it a radius so it knows what we're telling it. And we'll do this one, repeat that, and go over here. Now, what I just did is I added this as a radius 0.25, but it's not always the case. The only reason I was able to make that assumption when it wasn't labeled here is because it wasn't stated that it would otherwise be something else. Normally you'd have something in the drawing that says, like, if not stated, it is 0.1 inches radius or something like that. But in this case, it doesn't tell us, so we can safely assume it is going to be radius 0.25. So now that we've done that, select this bad boy and mirror it. Once we do that, assuming we don't escape out of it early, keep the source object, and just because it's nice and neat, we'll join it to be a collection of polylines. Okay, so awesome. See, that didn't take too long. That was pretty quick, all things considered. I did go a bit fast, but you guys can slow down the video if you need to, or just pause it in between. So now that we have this, what can we do here? Well, now that we've made this drawing, we want to add our center lines. And the reason we want to do that before our dimensions is because some of those dimensions are based on center lines. Like you'll see that this one, 1.25, it is based on this center and that center. So it would behoove us to do those first. So let's change our layer to center lines and get cracking at it. Obviously, it's based on the center, so if this is a segment here, this center will be the same as the whole center. So you see that? So we'll drag out just a little bit and then go about out to here. And I spaced it so this is roughly in the center because it'll end up looking nicer. So we also have one up here. From here outwards, about the same distance poking out on each side. And we'll go ahead and mirror that one specific item across the board here. And then we'll give it one more line that goes all through everything. That'll look nice and neat for sure. And then we'll add one more line, one more center line that goes across right away this way. Okay, perfect. So now that we have that, we have our center lines done. That's awesome. Now we have everything in place and we're ready to do our dimensions. So we're going to go change our we're going to change to our annotations layer, and the first thing I want to do is enter this text right here. And I'm going to enter what it says, MATL, short for material, 0.25 THK, short for thickness. You can right click enter, close text editor, or control enter, all of which work. Then we'll just move it into an appropriate spot. It's not measured, so we can approximate where it looks right. Maybe it looked a bit better over here. Yeah, it seems good. So from here, we are still in our annotations layer, so we want to make some dimensions, right? So at first, these dimensions will not look the same. And that's kind of a bummer. But what we can do is we can change them with the dimension style and then change specific ones with their properties. I'll get into that in just a second. Let's get them all in there first, shall we? So I'll click this one here and get that one there. Get this one here. And it's important to actually select the line segment, not just a snap or something. So now we'll also get one from here to line to line. That'll be nice and neat. Line to line. Oh, whoops. Oh, wow. Okay, so we'll delete this one. Since I did it all at once there, when I went back, it tried to delete it. So watch out for that. So now that we've got this, we've got two more that we want to take care of. Want to get this one, or actually three. 1, 2, and 3. Now this one is tricky, and I'll get into it later. But for convenience sake, start from the bottom and go up. Normally it doesn't matter, but I'll explain why it does when we get to editing this one specifically. So let's see what we've got here. So the first thing that we want to note is that it's got into like the 1000th place for our things here. We don't need that many. In fact, it's way too much. We have too many trailing zeros, and we have leading zeros, and we don't want those because if you look here, they don't have them. It's just 0.5, not 0.5. So let's go change those in our dimension style. We'll do modify. And the first thing I want to note in fit before we change those things I mentioned is this right here, these fit options. That'll play into this here later, but make sure you leave it as either text or arrows. If you change it to anything else, it'll try to automatically change it for you. And personally, I like to have them controlled by myself. I like to move them into a way that is specific to me. So that way, it's much easier to adjust them later. So just make sure you leave it here. So we'll go to primary units. Go to 0.00 and get rid of leading zeros. We're going to suppress leading zeros. Click OK and close. Now already that just looks better, but we still have a couple things we need to deal with. So we're going to deal with them in the properties. So the first thing we can note is this is perfectly fine. Nothing needs to be worried about here. This, though, is definitely wrong. You see, it should extend all the way in, and the arrow's the wrong way. So we'll right-click and go to Properties. What we need to change here is we go down to Fit, and we want to change the line to be forced. That's going to force the line all the way to the measured area. In this case, it's measuring to a center. It's a radius, so it's going to force it that way. And then how do we flip this arrow? You just hover over here, and you can just flip it like that. And then our radius there is pretty good, unless you want to just drag it a little bit closer, but you can see it's right where it needs to be. We'll do the same thing for this one. In fact, you probably could have changed both of these at the same time. Here, let's go ahead and try that. So if I select both of these and their properties are similar, it should allow me to change their similar properties at the same time. Yeah, you see, so I do that, and then I'll have to flip their arrows individually. See, that was one of those things I was talking about, where if you think ahead, you can kind of think about what optimizations you can make to how you do things, or at least kind of like explore with it. Because another thing is you want to have some fun while you're making this. If you're in AutoCAD, you want to make it at least somewhat entertaining for your time. At least I would hope so. So we are going to now change these, because those aren't right. Like, look at that. That's not even close to being right. So what we want to do is, this is called an extension line. If you look at one of these, the points I selected were here and here, and it's creating a line extending to those points that I selected at, or selected to. Well, for these, we don't care if they're there or not, because, I mean, they're ugly. And if we get rid of them, it'll point to the inside naturally. So we can select both of these, go to Properties. Make sure to not do Quick Properties, because Quick Properties will bring up a smaller, here, I'll show you. Quick Properties will bring up a smaller menu that only gives you a couple when you could have like everything. So make sure you do Whole Properties. So what we want to do is, it's an extension line, and that is under lines. Yeah. So extension line off. And once we do that, it'll shift a bit, but then we can play with it and get it where we want it. Like this one, we can just pull it right out here. Okay, so you just grab the snap, you can just move it right out here. And maybe drag it over just a little bit. And we want to go ahead and change this up now. So how might we do that? If you select, well, ultimately what we need to change is, you go down to Fit, and you want to change from Best Fit to Text and Arrows, and that'll say, hey, if I can't fit all of this within the area I'm trying to measure, just throw that crap outside. So then it'll do that, and that's exactly what we want it to do. But check this out. If I do that and then I mess with it like this, if I do it like down here, like top to bottom, which I said to not do before, and then I try to like move this up here, and I'm like, oh cool, that's great, let's go change its properties. Well, now you can't. It's a little quirky rule in AutoCAD for this specific thing. If you change the dimension initially, or from its initial placement, you cannot change its fit type. I don't know why that's an option, and that probably applies to multiple things in here, but because obviously we didn't make AutoCAD, we have to abide by it. So what we can do is make our dimension from bottom to top, and that terminating point that I'm clicking up here will be where the leader shows up. So now we can select this, go down to Fit, and then change it from Best Fit to Text and Arrows. Click Save, and now we have it. It was very agitating to find that, and AutoCAD can have some really quirky moments about it, but there's a great community online with Google and with Autodesk where you can help find some of these answers, and I'm obviously a resource to help you as well, because I know the ins and outs of AutoCAD quite a bit, but there's a community to help you find stuff like that if you need to know. So what we have now is basically a finished drawing. We just check everything. The 8th dimension, 3 dimension are okay, 1.25, 0.75. Everything looks pretty good. So yeah, we got everything done. Everything is finished. So let's take a good look at the fruits of our labor. Obviously, it'll bark at us if we try to turn off a layer while we're in it. So let's just temporarily go to the 0 layer. Nothing will be selected here. But if we go to annotations and we turn that off, you'll see all of our beautiful annotations are gone exactly how we want them. Our center lines, we can also make those disappear. And our drawing can also be hidden. Or we can hide all of them and pretend like we never did any of this. But because we did, let's take some pride and turn that back on. So that's kind of how you would approach a problem like this. The biggest thing to take away from this little tutorial is that if you approach it in a smart way, you can do maybe half the work. And there are a lot of things, even with 3D modeling, where something is perfectly symmetrical. So why would you do all the work twice and spend double the time when you could just do half the work and not waste your time? So I hope this was a helpful video. I think that we did just great. So we're going to get a nice fork here because that's what we did. We did the adjustable fork. So we're going to get an OK fork. We did great. This is awesome. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video and everything that went into it. I'll be posting more, so I look forward to you guys coming back. Thank you for coming.